From Compact Disc, that is music from Bloodgood at 88 FM, KSBJ. It's about 17 minutes after 10 p.m. This is Mike Wilson on the Rock of Love. And as promised, here in the studio, we have the one, the only, the legendary Mr. Dennis Welch. How's it going tonight, Dennis?
It's going very well, thank you.
Well, we're here to talk about, let's see, several different things. I guess we could kind of start into stuff head first. You got a record coming out. What's the name of it? What all's going to be on it? Who's doing it? What's it going to look like? How big is it going to be?
Well, actually, it's going to be Man of Steel Revisited, actually. We're going to call the new album, we were going to call it Alien Shoes and come up with a new cover concept and all that. And what we wound up doing was we wound up signing with a company that's going to keep the front cover concept. It's still going to be called Man of Steel, but it'll be an LP this time. And it'll have like 5 new songs, and then the songs that the people who have Man of Steel before will have, some of those songs, like 4 of the best cuts off of there. And they'll change the back cover, and it'll be out in about another month because the recording's already done and everything. So they have like Antinomian Nights and Carry Me Away and some of the stuff that you've been playing on it, and so it should be out soon.
Okay, so they're in the process now, I guess, of doing the artwork on it and everything like that. They're kind of getting everything doctored up to start.
That's it. They're just changing the back cover, basically, and the front cover, has already pretty much been done. So.
Okay, well, you're on a new label, Dark Records, I believe is the name of it, and they're being distributed by, you're on Hidden Records, which is Dark Records' sister label.
Right.
It's one of those technical things. Anyway, they're kind of in the same vein. You're on Hidden Records, and how is the distribution with this new album going to differ from the stuff that you did with on White Horse Records, which was a custom label, your own label?
Well, first of all, we will have distribution. We got a lot of airplay last time with Man of Steel, but around the country, but we didn't have any real distribution. Like nobody walking the album into the stores, like in Chicago and Pittsburgh and places like that, where we were getting a lot of airplay. And so this time we're distributed by a company called Regency Music, which is some of the Light Records people formed this company. And they've got like 10 or 15 salesmen around the country walking the album in every day going, this is a Dennis Welch album and you need 10 copies of this, you're sold out of it or whatever. And so it'll be a real distribution deal this time where instead of it just playing on the radio, it'll be available for sale, which we didn't have before. So it'll be a lot better deal, no question about it.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about I know that you've been playing, your band is notorious in the Christian field for saying, oh man, they're playing Rockefellers or they're playing Cardi's, they're playing secular concerts. What are these dudes, why are they calling themselves Christians doing this? Why don't you talk a little bit about your ministry, the band's ministry? Why do you play these secular concert halls? What's the vision of the band? And is in fact Dennis Welch and band a ministry, or is it a band made up of Christians?
Well, actually, I'll start with the last question and go forward with it. First of all, it really is a little bit of both. I mean, everybody in the band is a Christian. But, a while back it occurred to us that we were, especially with when we finished the Man of Steel project and began to get some secular airplay with it, we began to feel like that there was room in that arena for somebody to go out there and just be a Christian there and deal with issues besides salvation, from a Christian perspective. And, like on Man of Steel, we dealt with alienation, we dealt with genetic engineering and algeny or Don't Touch My Genes or whatever was about that. And so essentially what we've done is that we have just sort of redefined what Christians are, not redefined, actually this is, to us, is the biblical explanation for what we're supposed to be doing. And it's to actually be out in the general marketplace being Christians there, and we found that there's a place for that, and as long as the art is done properly, as long as it's done good, the concerts, the albums, or whatever, then people respect you for that, and you'd be surprised how many times people come up after a concert and say, well, I didn't understand everything you were talking about, but, you guys are different, and so won't you tell me why you're different? I mean, that happens in radio and everything, so we have a chance to witness there, too. But our primary thing is just to be Christians out there and to do good work, do a good job out there, so...
Okay. Well, what about the live thing? Playing live concerts at different clubs around town. Like once I saw you at Gary's and Ray's backstage out in West Houston. It's a really nice place, but a lot of people would call it just a bar. A Christian band was playing in a bar. Could you explain a little bit why you do that? And have you ever come across any problems? Has there been any negative response from people who aren't born again that may give you some flack and say, "Oh, those Christians, get them out of here," that kind of thing? Have you ever had a problem with that?
Surprisingly, the worst response has not come from people who aren't Christians and are offended by what we're saying. In other words, I can't remember that ever happening. I can't remember a time when a guy sitting out there says, "Hey, I'm tired of hearing about your point of view, your Christian point of view, and won't you get off the stage," kind of thing. I don't think that's ever happened. Most of the negative response has come from Christians who don't really understand what it is that we're doing. And I feel like that the Bible says that the earth is the Lord's, and that's either true or it's not true. And if it's true, then that means everything in the earth is the Lord's. And if we're going to take dominion over those things, then we shouldn't be afraid to go into hell's door, wherever that is, to say what we think, and that means if it's at a radio station, if it's at KLOL, or if it's at some bar or wherever, it's really no different. And so we just felt like that that there's the criticism is not valid, that we're not supposed to go out there and touch that part of the world. In fact, one of the criticisms people level most often is they say, well, you're not supposed to appear evil, avoid even the appearance of evil. And that's a misappropriation of that scripture. That scripture says avoid every form of evil. It doesn't say avoid even the appearance of evil. Gee, you could never, you'd never do anything. You would never do anything in your life if you had to avoid even appearing evil. That's not a valid complaint, really. So that's what we're doing. We're just out there telling people from our point of view, people who really need to hear it. We just felt like we couldn't go back into the Christian market again and continue to do concerts to people who really don't bring in their lost friends and that kind of thing. That was not our ministry. We don't criticize people who do that, but that just wasn't what we're supposed to be doing. Yeah, I'd rather open for ZZ Top than Petra. That's my...
Yeah, you're not here to feed the people who are already fed. You want to feed the people who are going to, die and burn in hell without hearing about it. Now, what about the complaint? I know this is common of all Christian rockers. What about the complaint that, rock and roll, man, that was born in the pit of hell? Now, I know, and I'm sure that hopefully that a lot of the listeners know that giving credit, saying, well, rock and roll is of the devil, is giving credit to the devil, that statement itself. Mm-hmm. But what about the thing, have you had any of the basic problems that a lot of Christian bands have whenever they say, you're playing rock and roll? Are you having more trouble with the Christians having a problem with you playing rock, or are you having more problem with the Christians saying you're playing rock in a secular place?
Well, actually, the problem with the question of rock, the actual style of music, I don't really argue much anymore. That's something that I solved a long time ago, and with the people that are closest to me, my family and those people, I've taken the time to try to explain to them what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And from a scriptural perspective, why that statement that rock is Satan's music is just such a ludicrous thing based on Scripture. It's just not true. But my family and friends understand that, and so I don't really argue with other people about it at this point. And now, because we have stepped out into the secular marketplace, yes, it has opened up a few new areas for people to criticize, but I don't, I'm not have an axe to grind for that. I take the time to explain to people, well, this is why we're doing it. And once people, it's interesting because even some of the harshest critics, when they find out why, if they sit down with me instead of just criticizing me, but actually come and sit down and say, Dennis, why are you doing what you're doing? And I explain to them what I'm doing, it makes perfect sense to them. And they walk away. Even people who have been severely critical of what we're doing walk away and say, hey, I agree with you, I'll be praying for you. And that's what we want, so.
Excellent. That sounds good. Well, in a couple of minutes after we do this, we're going to be bringing in some members of the band. Let's go ahead real quick and go over the members of the band. Excuse me. Who is everybody? What do they play? What do they do? Everything like that. What are the members of your band? And then we'll listen to some of this evil rock and roll that everybody's griping about. And then we'll come back with some members. Well, I tell you, it's there's an unusual group of guys waiting out there to come in here. So I've seen. They're unusual in a lot of ways. Skip Purvis is out there, so that tells
tells you the group's got to be a little bit unusual. And I'll just start with Skip Purvis. Skip is our rhythm and lead player and guitar, and also does some backing vocals. Let's see, Dave Marshall. Everybody I think knows him from Archangel, and he's been playing guitar and has played on all the albums and everything for like the last 4 or 5 years. All the recording that we've done and all our live stuff. And so Dave Marshall plays lead, and he does some singing a little bit and does some rhythm. And then there is the infamous Rusty Gibson, formerly of Fire Escape. That's how he's always introduced, it seems like. And he plays bass for us and played bass on the new tracks that are coming out. And actually went back and recut the bass track on the new Man of Steel, the remixed Man of Steel. And then Gary Ingram, formerly of the Hope of Glory, and also a group called the Sound Investment, both very successful groups. And he plays drums for us. And then we have a keyboard player. The joke is that we change keyboard players, of course, for every concert. And but all kidding aside, we have a fellow by the name of Steve Crump who is playing keyboards in this concert. And then he also has done some work with us when we play like Rockefellers and that kind of thing. And so I think that's everybody. And they'll be in here shortly to answer your questions.
Okay, so the song that we're about to hear isn't the song that's going to be on the album. You redid the bass tracks, and you redid some other stuff. You remixed it.
Basically, remixed the song and just laid a new bass track down and on Man of Steel. And to be honest with you, I mean, it's Michael. There's just no comparison. I mean, the new mix of everything is just a lot better. And,
okay, well, let's give a listen to the old mix. Okay. We don't actually have the new one. You're going to have to wait on the record for that. But let's listen to the old mix. Dennis Welch and Man of Steel on the Rock of Love. FM KSBJ. Dennis Welch is here in the studio with us, and he's here on this little piece of vinyl spinning next to me too. Man of Steel, 29 minutes away from 11 o'clock. This is Mike Wilson on the Rock of Love, and we got some people here in the studio with us. Let's see, who have we got here? We've got Dave Marshall, who was playing guitars on that, were you? You're playing guitars on that. We've also got the rhythm and lead guitarist of the Dennis Welch Band, Skip Purvis. They're all in here in the studio, kind of huddled together. So let's go ahead and address some questions. Why don't you introduce yourself? Why don't you say a thing or two? And be sure that Skip Purvis doesn't start the New Jersey accent, right?
Yeah, Skip, in fact, I guess our first question for you is, what are you doing here at 10:30? It's past your bedtime, isn't
That
it?
is correct. I've been here from New Jersey now for 25 years, and I'm having a tough time trying to get rid of the accent.
Actually, folks, good evening.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk to Skip first. Let's see, you're married, have 2 daughters here, they're telling me.
Yes.
And you were formerly the president of a Christian motorcycle gang. That sounds kind of interesting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Wow, you guys got all the information on me, huh?
Yeah,
But you
no secrets here, huh?
Get this from the FBI?
Actually, we got it from Dennis's wife, but I shouldn't have said that because you're going to go
like
clobber her later,
it's
right?
the same thing.
Okay.
Yes, I buy and sell Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Call us up here at KSBJ if you're interested in purchasing one.
Okay, we can start beeping people out now.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. I told you, only when the New Jersey accent starts.
Yeah, I rode for about a year with a Christian motorcycle club called the Lions of Judah, and Satan attacked us heavily and dispersed that band of people. Unfortunately, there were numerous extraneous circumstances relative to that situation, but God has continued to change my life and bless me with other motorcycles and other circumstances. And
other motorcycles.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay.
Glory to God.
Okay, why don't we talk a little bit? Says that you are a big fan of the blues, and you just did some blues work on an acoustic project of Dennis's. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? I didn't hear about this acoustic project, Dennis. What is that?
Well, the thing is, I do a lot of acoustic work in the churches. I mean, I just go in and do some things for, in the church. I don't take a band into the church anymore. It's just too obtrusive, and people freak out, especially if they see any hair or anything. And so I do all these acoustic things, and people ask for those songs, and I never, recorded those. So I made a little cassette to sell in concert, and Brother Skip of the Lions of Judah fame here.
Yeah, he called me up one afternoon and said, "Would you like to go do some studio work?" It's like the first Man of Steel record. 4 or 5 years ago, they called me up one afternoon and sitting in my easy chair and says, "How'd you like to go do an album with us?" And by golly, I wasn't busy, so went down and did it, and here we are 5 years later.
That's right.
Sitting in the middle of a studio freezing
Yes,
because the air
amen.
conditioner's turned down real low, right?
Very cold in this place.
Okay, say you're a former member of every band in Houston, I understand. Why don't you tell
Well,
us who you
I
were
just
with?
told Dennis that so I'd get the job.
Yeah. He's really never played before. This.
No, I just picked the guitar up a couple years ago.
Okay,
No,
Would
don't
you-
believe
no,
that. Don't believe anything this guy says.
okay, why
Forget
don't we talk about what you've really done now, Skip? What have you done?
Really?
What have you? Would it be
No,
easier
the
to talk about
motorcycle
what you
thing is
haven't
real.
done?
He really
Yeah,
has been.
I really did ride with the Christian Motorcycle Club, and I was...
He has the scars to prove that.
Man, painful situations, yeah. But anyway, what I prefer talking about is the group. It's been a wonderful thing to get together with. It's just so great to be with brothers that you get along with so wonderfully. Being a musician and having played for so many years, you find that musicians, as a general rule, are, I hate to say unusual, but...
Oh, go ahead. We're
yeah,
unusual.
pretty
Say
unusual,
it.
yeah. They don't get along real well, and this band is really put together by God. It's incredible traveling with these people, how wonderfully we get along, accept criticism. Brother Dave Marshall here is just one of the best arrangers this side of the Mississippi, and gosh, we do whatever he tells us, and
you say that without laughing too. I'm impressed.
Things work out
There's no
wonderfully.
question about
Dave's great.
Okay, why don't we talk to Dave a little bit? Dave Marshall.
Yeah, Dave Marshall, Ranger.
Let's say you're formerly with a couple of bands. Jonathan, let's see, no. You formerly have two sons, Jonathan and Seth, formerly of the band Archangel.
Yeah, he formerly has two sons, but he still has them.
He still has, okay. Okay, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the band Archangel?
Well, I would like to say this first, that I have been accused many, many times of having an accent, and I'd like to put all of these things to rest, first
Listen
of
to
all.
him. He's talking. Come on, give us Copper's Cove. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. Excuse me. I did play with Archangel from around 76, to when the album came out, and then Archangel disbanded to do some other things. And it was an interesting project, and it's history now. And we recently had a little get-together, a reunion concert to help raise some funds for Help Services of Humble here, and to adopt some children. And that was the last time Archangel's done anything.
Okay, so you don't think that Archangel is going to be doing anything in the future? You think that they're probably disbanded for good now? Because I know that there are a lot of fans listening to the show tonight that are big fans of the band.
Well, the only thing I can think of, there were a couple of songs that we had done, after that time that the album came out, that might somehow or other, be on some sampler album. That's not anything I could really even say about anything. I don't know that much about that happening.
Okay. Okay, on the song that we've been playing here on the Rock of Love, a song called Carry Me Away, there is some masterful guitar work on that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the guitar work on that? How long have you been playing guitar? What have you, where did you learn? How long have you been playing with Dennis? And talk a little bit about, about the recording of Carry Me Away, which is going to be on the new LP, by the way, right?
Yes, it will. Sure will.
Well, thanks to Paul and Kemper, who had some excellent, studio gadgets to make, they could make a car brake sound great, but they do a lot of excellent stuff, and a lot of times what we do when we go in, if I don't have an idea anything for the song, then Kemper will say, well, why don't you try something like this? And I don't really remember exactly how that particular lead was laid down. I know we just went in and we're looking for something with more sustain, not a lot of notes, not real busy, but just to have to create an atmosphere. And so that's what we went for, and it came out that way.
Okay, now you're speaking of the guy who produced the new album, Kemper Crab. Now he's a producer, and I heard he's over on the West Coast now working with Gino Vanelli, correct?
Right. He just did some stuff. Can't remember who it was with, but he was out there helping to do some lyric.
He was doing some
correction.
writing with him, I
Right.
think.
Writing with him?
For some,
Okay, sounds good. So, there's one part, one last question before we go into playing the music. There's one part on the song "Carry Me Away" where somebody is saying something, be it backwards or forwards. It's kind of whispered, kind of ominous. And I believe that you are one of the 2 people living today that actually knows what that's saying. And I wouldn't,
Dave. Don't you tell him.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna put you on the spot and ask you to tell us what it is because well, we could make history if we really wanted to.
No, what they need to do is buy the record. You see,
buy the record and
spin it backwards, and
that's right.
Okay, why don't you? Well, you don't have to tell us what it is, but talk a little bit about what's being said on there. You don't have to hint at it. I know that you kind of want to keep it a secret. I know it's Dennis Welch's album. He doesn't even know what it's saying himself.
I don't know. In fact, Kemper was going to tell me, and I asked him not to tell me. I said I'd rather it be a mystery, as long as it's nothing that's evil or anything like that. And
I wouldn't think that anybody would consider what's on there evil.
Okay.
I mean, it's nothing wrong with what's on there, and I think once people find out what's on there, they'll
be
not have
happy
anything.
about it.
They'll probably
is that
find out.
mysterious enough for you? I don't know.
Well, it sounds kind of eerie. Why don't we go ahead and
that
listen?
Should clear it up for everybody. It does for me.
Okay.
Well, yeah, you could settle the question by playing the record backwards now.
Oh well. That's quite all right. Why don't we just get out of here before everybody gets in trouble? Here's "Carry Me Away," music from Dennis Welch and band on the Rock of Love. The words going backwards that nobody but nobody knows what they mean. "Carry Me Away," that's Dennis Welch at 88 FM KSBJ. 13 minutes away from 11 p.m. This is Mike Wilson, and in the studio, who do we have now? We've got Rusty Gibson, who is the bass guitarist for the band, right, Rusty?
Right.
Okay, and we also have Steve Crump, who's the keyboardist for this this concert, right? This concert.
You'll be okay.
Okay. Well, speaking of concerts, why don't let's talk about the real reason you're here, Dennis. You want the entire city of Houston to come see you in concert this Friday, right?
Well, I'd like for the entire city to come, but maybe if only about 500 people would come, that'd be fine. We're going to be at a new place called Stan and Ollie's. It's a new teen club over on Richmond, 6130 Richmond. And we'll be there Friday night at 8 o'clock. And if we sell out the first show, we're going to do a second show at 10 o'clock. And it is a real happening place.
Okay, let's talk about this place. It's going to be kind of weird telling Christians to say, hey, let's go see Dennis Welch at a nightclub. Explain this place. You told me about it before. And it sounds like a really kind of healthy, clean environment. Why don't you talk about the place you're going to be playing, Stan and Ollie's Fun Drinkery?
Right, exactly. It is in fact, it's the first place we've really played since we opened for Allies out at the Pasadena Civic Center. I think it's the first place that we could invite the Christian community out to and say, hey, this is a good place, come out there, because there's no alcoholic beverages served at all. It is a nice club. It used to be the old Paul Berlin Club, and they've revamped it and everything, and it's the finest teen club I've ever seen. And it's a multi-level thing. It has serves food and drink, but no alcoholic drinks, and they have somebody like kind of goes around and makes sure that nobody comes in with any sort of alcohol or drugs or anything like that. It's a very, very clean environment, and a lot of the churches that I go into and stuff are going to be apparently going to be coming out to it too. So
okay, so it's not necessarily a kind of a what Christians call a light club. It's not actually a Christian establishment, because there's a lot of lost people that go in there too. But it is a kind of a clean cut place. There's no alcohol being served, and
it is owned. Half of the owners are Christians. Two of the people who own it are Christian people, and that's the reason they started it, was because they felt like, a lot of the coffee house kind of concept things have just not happened. It's not working. And so why don't we come up with something where the general marketplace can come to and Christians can come to too, and neither one really would be compromising. And so that's what this place is. Stan and Ollie's is the place. So.
Okay, so like if there's any younger people out there that really want to come see you in concert, their parents can have faith and know that they're going to be safe going there. It's not like a club. They're not going to get beat up. There's not a lot of drunks hanging out outside. It's well patrolled.
Right, and in fact,
kind of a chaperoned place,
that's right. In fact, their parents could bring them to this, because what they've done is they have dropped the teen club name off of it, because what they found is there's so many people who want to go to a clean place like this and have a good dinner and hear good music and everything and not have to worry about people being drunk there and stuff, that now they're drawing people like 25, 30, 35. So now people are bringing their kids to it. So
okay, so it's just simply a good atmosphere to be there. Yeah. Okay, now you're going to be there in concert when? This Friday night at what, 7:30?
Friday night at 8 o'clock.
At 8 o'clock.
Right.
Okay, now I believe we do. We got a couple of pairs of tickets to give away to that concert, so why don't we go ahead and do that now? Open up the phone lines at 446-4493, and we'll take the first couple of callers to win a pair of tickets to the Dennis Welch and Band concert this Friday night. How's that, Dennis?
That's great. We'll see him out there.
Okay, well, let's talk just a minute to Rusty Gibson. Now, you used to play with the band Fire Escape, right? Okay, now what was that?
So that was my claim to fame.
Claim to
it's
fame.
It's going to be on my tombstone. It follows me everywhere.
When he does the rest of his life, it'll say, Rusty Gibson, formerly of Fire Escape.
But I don't have it tattooed on my arm.
Okay.
That's next.
Okay, is that coming next? Okay, you also used to also be with a band here in Houston that some people knew called Apocalypse. Now, this isn't the Apocalypse that won Rocker's Choice this evening that had the song He's Your Only Friend, because that's spelled a little bit different. The band Apocalypse that we heard this evening was spelled different simply because there was a band before they started that had that name that broke up. Now, you were with the band Apocalypse that is spelled with the E on the end, right?
Right. In
Okay.
fact, Steve and I both were in that band.
Okay, Steven. Okay, y'all were both in the band. Okay, why don't you talk to us a little bit, just talking to Rusty Gibson here, the bass guitarist for the Dennis Welch Band. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, how long you've been playing, maybe some of the other bands you played with. You've done some studio work, I understand. I understand that you play an Olympic bass now, and it sounds a lot like a Fender Precision bass on the tracks. Why don't you tell us about the Olympic bass that you play?
The Olympic bass, not Olympic.
Yeah.
I can never get rid of that. Everybody gives me a hard time because I don't play a Fender bass. I don't even like Fender basses. No, it's an Olympic bass. It's like the guy in Sweet Comfort plays.
Okay, so you just recently changed over to playing that type, and you also redubbed the bass part. They had what Dennis called an actual real bass player on the new the remix of the Man of Steel song, correct?
Right, it had a faulty bass line because it was a Fender bass, so I put a real bass on it.
Okay, well, let's talk for a minute to Steve Crump. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to meet Steve. You're married, you got a wife named Debbie and 2 sons, and you formerly played with the band Apocalypse also, and you're the keyboard player for this gig. Now, the joke going around the band and around the city of Houston is that, well, they change keyboard players every concert. So you're playing with them on this concert coming up this Friday, and we will be giving away, I guess we've already given away the pair of tickets to the concert now looking at the phone lines. But why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing now, how long you've been playing keyboards, maybe what kind of instruments you use?
Well, I've been playing just about all my life, and right now I just working in the studio. I've got a home studio, and I've been doing a little work over here in Humble with a friend of mine, and we just cut a single. It's called See the Light, and I'm having a little problems with the pressing, but it should be out pretty soon. And Dennis, I guess he got desperate for a keyboard player. He called me up. Said,
we have a running. Steve knows this, of course, because he hears it probably every Saturday night. We have a running advertisement on here every Saturday night now for about 3 years for a keyboard player. And what it really amounts to is that Steve here is the guy that the Lord has officially called, because he's told me that anyway, to be the keyboard player of our band. And and Steve is just not listening to the call of God. And so we're having to.
So why don't you get your life right, Steve?
That's right. As soon as he really hears the voice of God, we'll take the ad off of here. But for now, it's that's just the way it is. So.
Okay, so you're playing keyboards for this next concert that's coming up this Friday night at Stan and Ollie's Fun Drinkery at 8 p.m., right?
That's right.
Should be a good show. Okay, well, why don't we listen to, let's see, one of the songs. Okay, now this is going to also be on the new version of the album, too. You mentioned it as being one of your personal favorites. Run From the Fire is the name of the song. It's just one that you kind of...
Are you going to play Deep in the Night?
Well, no. Well, wait a minute. Which one do you want me to play, Dennis? I've got both of them here.
You got them both there? What have
you
got queued up? Why don't you tell me?
Okay, Deep in the Night. Was that what we talked about?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, now, is that going to be on the...
It's been 10 minutes, though, okay? So, 10 minutes ago,
my memory. Okay, well, why don't we talk about that? This is a tune that you like.
Okay, Deep in the Night definitely will be on the new album. Run From the Fire won't be on the new one.
Okay, so you're going to nix that one then. Yeah, so maybe you're going to be doing this live, maybe not. They'll have to come out and see, right?
That's it. That's right.
Okay, Dennis Welch on the Rock of Love.
Hey,
88 FM, KSBJ, Deep in the Night. Music from Dennis Welch at 88 FM. It's about 3 minutes away from 11 o'clock. This is Mike Wilson, and join us here in the studios. Dennis, now we got somebody new. We've got somebody with a real claim to fame this evening. He is the loudest drummer in captivity, Gary Ingram.
That's right. What can I say?
Welcome, Gary.
Welcome, Gary. Yeah, okay, well, let's talk about some of the bands that you've been in. You've been in the Hope of Glory,
right,
which was, everybody knows probably now as the Hope. And let's see, Sound Investment was another band that you were with. Mm-hmm. Dennis tells me that every band that you've ever been in has been successful, and that's why he hired you, right?
That's true.
Yeah, and,
he's modest, that's the only.
So
he's
far,
modest too.
So far, we're still waiting for this third one to be a charm, right?
Get out of here.
Okay, how long you been playing with the band, Gary?
About, 8 months, 9 months?
Longer than that.
Time goes by fast when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Started last, well, they actually did the cymbal overdubs and some of the drum work on the new recording.
That's true.
And that really started
it.
Yeah, and so that was like January of '86. Okay. So, I mean, if you can believe that, it's been a little over a year.
Okay, so y'all been playing together for a pretty good long while.
Right.
Talk about a little bit about your history. How long have you been? You've been playing obviously for quite a long while. Right. You've been in some, pretty big, successful bands in the Christian market. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Maybe there's something that you remember. One thing in particular stand out of all your years of doing concerts and touring and stuff like that. What is it that you remember most about being in some of these other bands?
Well, the first really successful band I was in was called the Sound Investment back when I was in high school, and we became one of the top Texas bands, and we were the warm-up group for like Janis Joplin and the Beach Boys and the Buffalo Springfield and the Who, groups like that. And that's when I got into drugs. And then when I found Jesus, I left that group and became turned on for the Lord and met up with Bubba Chambers, the lead guy for the Hope of Glory, and just went from darkness into light. And I was very fortunate in that I could still play and enjoy my music and yet do it for the Lord. It's very rewarding.
Okay, now I remember one night that I'd seen you play over in West Houston somewhere. We all went to Denny's and we had a nice long conversation over a cup of coffee about some of the things that you had done with the Hope of Glory. Now that was quite a few years ago. Was that back in the early 70s, right when Christian music was young?
Yes.
How long did
Come on, Michael, don't date us. Goodness gracious. Back in the BC, yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, you got to remember that I'm fairly new to Christian music, right? Okay. So you got to remember that I wasn't around in 1973 to hear you play live or anything. What kind of
Gary, is he saying he wasn't born in 1970?
I thought that's what he was going to say,
if
but
that's the case, I'm
not
out here.
Okay. Let's say KSBJ wasn't here in 73, so. Okay, let's talk about some of the stuff that you did with the Hope of Glory. You played with them for quite a while, and then they disbanded, I guess. How long were you with them again?
We started in 1972, and we were more or less like a guinea pig type of group. We were playing contemporary music, not heavy, but contemporary. And back in those days, contemporary was considered radical. And drums in a church was even more radical.
It was unheard of.
Right. Yeah. And we'd go in and people would just be terrified, but we would minister Jesus and they would see the Holy Spirit, and then we could do just about anything we wanted to do. But we had to break that ice, and I believe that's what God called us to do in that area.
Okay, so you're one of the forerunners of Christian music as we know it today. We got a few minutes left. Why don't we go ahead and take some phone calls? If you'd like to ask Dennis or Gary a question, give us a call here at KSBJ at 446-4493. 446-4493 is the number. Dennis, how long have you yourself been performing? How long has Dennis Welch been? I remember that you did an album just by yourself. I believe it was an acoustic album.
I did an album in 1980, actually, and that was the first recorded effort, and it was called Face to Face. And it was, even though I used studio musicians and all that on it, it was a different kind of album. I was really trying to find what style of music that I was most comfortable with, and as it turned out, the best stuff on that record pretty much was the rock music. And so that was 1980. So I've really been performing. I performed, of course, before I recorded anything, and then after 1980, I started performing real regular and just really have been doing it full time, to make my living. In other words, for about a year or so, or a little less. So.
Okay, so you are now what a lot of people refer to as a professional musician. That's what you do full time.
That's what I do.
Do you have any ideas for tours or anything like that?
Well,
concerts, of course, coming up, but do you have any tours?
After this album comes out, we will be trying to catch on as an opening act, probably with somebody, preferably a secular band, and our manager's working on that, and then we're looking for an agent to help us book some of that stuff. But we'd like to catch on as an opening act with a secular band. We'll see how that works out.
Okay, real quick, let's take a phone call. We've got Jeff on the line. Jeff, what would you like to ask Dennis this evening?
Hi, Dennis. I was wondering, how did y'all, break the ice, with those churches? Because my dad, he's, like totally anti-Christian contemporary.
Well, first of all, a lot of it has to do with your attitude. If you go into the places and you act like, that you have something to prove, or you go in and say, that I'm going to do this art, I'm going to do it my way, and if you don't like it, then you have a problem. And let me give you an example. 4 or 5 years ago, Dave Marshall and I, when we first started doing music together, went into a church out here somewhere close to Humble, and a very conservative church, and I realized once we got in there that they were too conservative for our music. And so I walked up before we did our concert, and I said, I want you to know that we love you, and the style of music that we've chosen is not chosen to offend anybody. We're here to minister to people who maybe don't listen to mellower music or whatever, and if that's a problem, then we just won't play tonight. And the church said, no, go ahead. And we went ahead and played a rock concert there, and I'm not kidding you, some of the most conservative people I've ever met came up to us and said, hey, we love you, and we'll be praying for you and supporting you. So, a lot of how successful you are dealing with, I'm sure Gary ran into this too in his bands, is that it has to do with your attitude. And if you have an axe to grind, if you go in acting like that they have to listen to your music no matter what, then you're going to have problems with it. And I think that's the secret, is just going in and saying,
the Christian audience are no dummies. And if you get up there in front of them and you aren't real, they're going to know it.
That's exactly right. That's
okay.
Right.
It's 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is KSBJ Humble. We're speaking with Dennis Welch and his drummer this evening, Gary Ingram. Let's go ahead and take another quick phone call. Got time for maybe one more. Jimmy, you're on the line with Dennis Welch. What would you like to ask him? Hello. Okay, let's try it again. Punch a button, and now maybe it'll work. Jimmy.
Yes.
What would you like to ask Dennis this evening?
I'd like to talk to Gary.
Okay, Gary, he's sitting right here.
Okay. Hi, Gary.
Hey. Go ahead.
I was wondering, on their first album, did you use electric drums?
What kind of drums did you use on the first album?
Which album? Oh, which album are you talking about?
Oh, Man of Steel. Aren't they electric drums?
Well,
let Dennis answer that.
Actually, some of the stuff was done on acoustic drums, like Man of Steel, Change of Heart. Some of that was done on acoustic drums, and then electronic drums were used, like on Don't Touch My Jeans, and the duet that I sang with Becca Crabb. That was done with electronic drums, and then on this stuff that you're hearing, almost all of it was done with electronic drums, except the cymbal overdubs, and Gary did those in the studio.
And in live concert, we use acoustic drums and Simmons.
So you got a mixture of your kit there.
Right. And when I say electronic drums now, I'm talking about a drum machine.
A drum machine, not actually like a Simmons kit where you have a real
Right.
A real
what
drummer,
Gary plays in concert is a Simmons kit and
and
a regular drum set.
Okay, well, 6 minutes after 11 o'clock. I guess we're just about out of time, Dennis. We appreciate you coming by this evening, as well as the rest of your band. You're going to be in concert once again. When is it going to be?
Friday night at 8 o'clock.
Friday night at 8 o'clock at Stan and Ollie's Fun Drinkery. Right. And I guess if anybody wants any more information on that concert, they can call us here at KSBJ at 446-4493. Dennis, we thank you for coming by. Appreciate your band coming by. And I guess we'll wrap things up with a new single from the new album that's going to be on it that's not available right now, is it? No, a song called Antinomian Nights. Real quick, talk about this song. What does it mean? What is it about?
Well, antinomian actually means no name or no law is what it means. And it was written after I had seen a thing on 60 Minutes about where a guy had walked into his business partner's office and shot him dead. And the guy who got killed had recorded the whole thing. So there was no question about who did it or anything. And the state of Florida let the guy go the guy who actually pulled the trigger and everything, let him go because he had been recorded against his will. And supposedly his civil rights had been violated. And, I don't think a man, scripturally at least, has civil rights. If he kills you, he don't deserve any civil rights, basically, especially, something as menial as being recorded against his knowledge. So anyway, I went off and I sat down, I thought about that, and I thought, our society, the reason it's like it is because Scripture, the law in Scripture is very sane. It makes sense. And you'll notice in the bridge on that song, it says it was easier when we just had 10 laws. It was so easy when we just left Eden. Just 10 commandments, and I think that we would be a lot better off, and that's what that's about. So we called it Antinomian Night. And each verse is a little story about how our society has become antinomian.
And antinomian, what does antinomian mean?
It means no law.
There you go.
Against God's law.
Okay, so once again, you're probably going to be doing this song in concert this Friday night.
No question about it. We'll be doing this one.
Okay, well, we'll see you out there at the concert, and we hope to see you, the listeners, there too. This is Dennis Welch wrapping things up tonight on The Interview, Antinomian Nights on the Rock of Love.